K-Man's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio K-Man's Talk Today.
If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to have an excellent talk today on this terrific Tuesday's edition of Talk Today, not just because of how the day starts, but how it's going to end. And how it's going to happen in between, well, we're going to start you off with some more political discussion on the eve of our general elections. Join us as we welcome to the studio initially Mr. Raul Nicholson Co. So stay tuned for Talk Today.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. And Royal Fidelity Bank and Trust, money at work.
Radio K-Man's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thanks for joining us. And if I can, at the very outset, echo what you heard DJ Lynn share about 10 minutes to 12 when he was talking about the vote counts, every single vote. If we could, as a personal appeal just for me, please, no matter where you live, where you're registered, where you're going to vote, please go out tomorrow and vote. Don't be scared of the booger man. Wear your mask. Don't wear your mask. Go out and please go out and vote. I say that with the greatest respect. I don't think it offends anybody. If it does, I got gloves. Let's go in the ring and I'd like to knock you out. But with that, Raul Nicholson Co., good afternoon to you, man.
Dwayne, this has been an unbelievable ride. Okay, it's a ride that I would do again and again.
Yes.
Because it's when you go out there, right, and you see the level of despair.
Mm-hmm.
This election is pivotal because we cannot elect people that are not doers and don't know how to do things.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot elect people that go there and may write a policy paper or sit and do an academic exercise when our people are suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? We have people running in my district. That's what they are. They have created policies, but do they know how to fix the issues? That is what is required now. And I met with an eminent QC in Cayman yesterday just to talk about the country generally and to get his feedback. This man is a very learned person. And he said, that was his conclusion. He said, we need the guys that know how to do it, that have the experience, that have made tough decisions, that are not willing to sit back and take just the status quo. Because they're going to be tough decisions that are going to have to be made. And the Cayman First philosophy must resonate, must emanate, and must touch every person in Cayman, specifically West Bay South. This isn't, I am not going to go in there, Dwayne, and just, collect a check, okay?
Yeah.
Because if I collect a check and yet there are people in West Bay and suffering, this morning was an absolutely amazing morning. I received the number of messages that I received from persons. I thought that I had visited everyone, right? But there were people that you went and you may have met one person in the household. You didn't meet everyone. And I'm receiving messages from people, look, you have my vote. You came by the house. I didn't get a chance to see you, but please be rest assured that you will be getting my vote because of what I am saying. I have not on one occasion whether it's a talk show, whether it's a meet and greet, whether it's a public meeting, what I talk about are solutions. I don't talk, I know what the problems are. And if I can go and reference how to fix these issues, because that's how I will be judged.
So you're saying we need doers as the person you spoke to earlier?
We need doers. They need the word that he used. We need the people that know how to get stuff done.
Okay. Speaking of Raul Nicholson Co., you have obviously, this is a paid segment. You've paid for this. This is your time. You've also said in our discussions and publicly, let's have a conversation about what happens.
Right.
I'm going to take license with that.
That's fine.
Pretend that this is just a regular discussion, but I want to be respectful of your time and be guided by what you say. Partly because it's a public meeting for you, a platform, right?
Right.
And in that, if you say, well, can we not get there for whatever reason, I take no offense at it, and I ask the listeners do the same.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, this is a competition. This is why the British system of this divide and conquer crap that we've endured forever has poured this populace one against the other. Some constituencies may feel like they got great choices and they want to elect everybody, as you've advocated for a national vote.
Right.
Some may say, boy, flip a coin. Right? But we need to be, as voters, prepared to engage, as you said, get involved, be active and go and physically cast that ballot, and then informed, for those of us who pray, in a prayerful manner, but at least in a considered manner. We need to move that forward. So with that in mind, a couple of things I want to ask you. I wrote them down so I don't miss them. Character, integrity, honesty, and ethics.
Right.
To what extent does that come into play in an election, and in this one in particular?
Those are all important issues, but those are not even important in election. Those are important everywhere, in anything you do, in any relationship that you have,
right?
And especially in a relationship that you have with the public, a relationship that you have. And that's why I'm saying is when you speak, speak in a way that is clear, that you're not playing verbal gymnastics. If you're asked a question, that's a yes or no answer. Give a yes or no answer.
So I can hold you accountable for what you say?
Absolutely.
Okay.
This stuff is all recorded. Anything that I say now, then you can come back and challenge me.
Not just you, but I mean, but
everyone,
you too. Okay.
Everyone. But that's why I also stress that it's important that when asked a question, whether it's controversial or not, there have been people that have been asked questions that are considered controversial, and what their answer was, well, it's a hypothetical, so I can't respond to that answer. It's a hypothetical and answer a hypothetical question.
Right.
Right? You put yourself in a scenario and you answer it in that way. And my view is, Dwayne, is that all of those things, all of those characteristics that you've mentioned, you have to have those in anything you do. Whether it's a business relationship, whether it's a personal relationship, whether it's just like having a coffee.
Okay. So honesty. How many of us actually genuinely value and want honesty? The partner says, does this dress make me look fat? If you're smart, you might not respond, yes, dear. Or you might say, yeah, because whatever, right? So on a personal level, to the point where we're telling people directly and deliberately the cold hard truth in the words of George Jones.
Well, the Cold Hard Truth is a fantastic song, right? I mean, we should live by that, right?
Some of us do.
Some of us do. But, honesty, if somebody asks you a question, to give them an honest opinion, the analogy that you use, whether the dress looks nice or not, you can say maybe that dress isn't perfect, doesn't complement your, but go and get something that, and you can suggest, I'd prefer if you use this one because this one is better. I mean, I think that's honesty.
Yeah.
That is not detrimental to the person's, well-being, but you can be honest about those types. And in no relationship, right, that you can actually say, and that is going to be perfect.
Right.
But it has to start off with a level that is based on it. And that's why voters, when they're making their decision tomorrow, and that's what I'm saying, when they make the decision tomorrow to cast a vote for myself, right, they need to call all their friends. Tomorrow is a pivotal time. And if you want to have your family remain on the NAU, if you want your family to continue to be beholden to the government and not get employment in all the sectors that they're trained to, then you must think about that. And you must think that Raul Nicholson Co. is someone that actually knows how to get stuff done. I know how to get people employed. I know how to run a business. I know how to make revenues. I know how to cut costs. Those are all the things that are going to be required at this election.
Right. And I want to ask you more about that. As you talk about honesty, I love Billy Joel. I think he's a great storyteller, an excellent songwriter, a gifted performer. His song "Honesty,"
right? Who's that? Sorry,
Billy Joel.
Billy
right?
Joel, yeah.
And that's almost like a mantra. I mean, I love that song. I love his music. It doesn't matter. One of the best history lessons come through Billy Joel's songs.
Right.
And the one that I think of that takes us through all the years, we didn't start the fire. Right. And it takes us through history. Why I use that as a reference is to ask of you, when we talk about that honesty, you said there are going to be some really, really, really tough some difficult, challenging decisions that need to be made, right? Our electorate seemingly have looked at our politicians lovingly, given them all sorts of passes, and have allowed them to do and say things and never hold them accountable. The politician knows that if they say to the country, for instance, listen, we just took on $1 billion in debt, we don't have the infrastructure, whatever the hard things are, they will lose their seat.
Right.
Do we have the people with the mettle, METTLE? Do we have the people with the integrity, the people with the what it takes?
Well, I am telling you, Dwayne, right, is that when I was in the corporate world, okay, you couldn't sit in front of a board. You had a fiduciary responsibility to tell the truth and to tell the truth in an honest, transparent fashion. The same applies for what's happening now in the electorate. We can't just only talk about the good things. Because if we talk about the good things, when the bad things do happen, then the electorate will say, well, you never told me it was that way. So I am of the opinion that when we speak about the glowing accomplishments, we also have to think about the things that aren't functioning the way they should as well. Because if those things are not fixed, whatever is doing well will be undermined by those things that are not going well. And it is incumbent on everyone. It's incumbent on you, actually. When I come back on the show once elected, you have to say, well, Raul, that stuff that you did, this one was particularly done well, but that other one wasn't done well. And we had this discussion the first time I came on the show.
You remember?
Right? And the discussion was that you have to, in order for a product or a service or anything to function well, you have to get the key stakeholders in the room.
Right.
If I am going to provide a service to the West Bay South community, and I decide we're going to build, which I want to do, is to build a proper community center. Right? And I will say, you know what, I would like a squash court, a badminton court, a swimming pool. But we'd also look to buy. We should look at creating a polo pitch, right? That may not be. My view is like in 30 years, polo may become but it is not something that's going to resonate with the community. We need to find out what is fit for purpose. And I think that when you talk about that, you have to involve those people. We can't. The decision. I will give you a perfect example of a decision that was taken that there wasn't public consultation. The graveyard, unfortunately, that was done. And that is something that I am going to fix, right? I am going to have to address that issue. It was built. It was not proper there was no proper consultation done. But I've spoken to all the residents around there, including the church, right? That particular piece of land was the ideal location for a park.
It was supposed to be where the park was. The cemetery was further up.
Exactly. It's supposed to be a park. And it should be a park. It's central. The arteries come straight into there. There's a fantastic opportunity for us to have created and we have a church there that could be used as a hurricane shelter, convention center. There are lots of infrastructure around that location that would make that the most ideal park location. But no one was consulted. And a decision like that, what the property value of the people around there, right? The voters around there, they were never consulted. They were told they were going to open up the cemetery, and they didn't have any consultation. And that is absolutely wrong. It's unconscionable. And in this day and age, where there isn't a need, there isn't an impediment to communicate. To have not communicated that is just wrong.
I want to ask you about that when you come back. And I live by a mantra: to thy own self be true. There are many things that guide me. There are a few things that irritate me, but those that do, well, so it be, right? So we talk about it when we come back. But just on that cemetery thing, why are we still building cemeteries the way we build them? You travel to the rest of the world, why can't we have 4 or 5 stack high? Why can't we buy a plot? We're giving developers, license to do 30 stories and maybe 100% density. I'm just exaggerating, but that's a different story. So when we come back, we talk about that.
I mean, of course.
And you get into the issues that you want to speak to?
Absolutely.
No, what's the constituency for you again?
West Bay South. The only choice is West Bay South.
Your name?
Raul Nicholson Coe.
Say it again.
Raul Nicholson Coe. Number 2 on the ballot, West Bay South.
He's from Northwest Point.
Choice. Northwest Pointer. True and true.
We won't hold that against him too much.
No, you can't actually. Northwest Point is the best. Okay, trust me.
More pleasant.
I know. I don't think so. They have a lot to. Northwest Point got a lot to offer me.
My friends,
nothing wrong about Pleasant. Nothing wrong about Pleasant. But you got to give us a props.
There you go. All right, listen. Here's the reason why we should have a national vote. But when we come back, Raul Nicholson Co, West Bay South. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Thanks.
Election Day 2021. History in the making. Stay informed. Radio K-Man brings you the latest updates from the polls and live coverage from our correspondents out in the field, including special in-studio panel discussion covering all things elections 2021.
Let's see if we can find a way that together we can move the country forward.
With Talk Today's Sterling Dwayne Ebanks and For the Records, Orit Carter.
It may not be all rosy, the future of the Cayman Islands, depending on which road we decide to travel down.
Plus other guest panel members. Coverage starts at 7 p.m. Stay informed on Election Day 2021. 45 years of bringing you results. Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
Freedom, Cayman Rock. Freedom, Little Cayman. Soft breezes, blue waters, no traffic. Unwind and rejuvenate your mind, body, and soul. Sister Island Staycations, a taste of freedom. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
At Subway, we know a meal isn't quite complete without a side, and that's why we're introducing waffle fries. Subway's waffle fries are oven-baked softness with extra crispy edge, giving a satisfying taste to be enjoyed as is or in any of Subway's dipping sauces. Order waffle fries as a side item for $2 or make it a meal deal with any sandwich or salad with a 20-ounce drink and waffle fries for an additional $3 or a 30-ounce or bottle drink and waffle fries for an additional $3.50. Subway, eat fresh.
We are in an age of exponential change. The world is experiencing a technology boom where innovation is at an all-time high. What does this mean for small island nations? How can we adapt to the emerging digital revolution? Join 900 delegates from 3 Caribbean countries at one regional event to tackle the theme, Global Digital Disruption, Threat or Opportunity. The virtual RF Economic Outlook Conference happens on May 6th. Register today at rfeoc.com.
King Sports Center takes pride in being more than just an ordinary gymnasium. For 14 years, their multi-purpose facility has been providing the community with a variety of sporting, recreational, and relaxation activities. King Sports Center has a bowling alley, lounge bar, multi-purpose rooms, powerhouse gym, rock climbing wall, bungee jumping, a 10,000 square foot rink, and so much more. For more information on the variety of services, call their friendly staff today at 946-5464 or email kings@candw.ky or visit www.kingsportscenter.com. King Sports Center, your one-stop shop for fitness, recreation, and relaxation.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. And we're on the eve of our general elections. If I can say, with the greatest of respect, please, please, please go tomorrow and cast your ballot. Do not stay away, please. You can wear a mask. You don't have to wear a mask. If you go there and you want a mask, we understand that every single person is going to be given a pencil. That's another amount of money that's going to be expended for elections and ensure that you feel at least somewhat safe. Masks are provided if you want. We are a very, very, very law-abiding, respectful, civil, compliant people who have always participated heavily in our elections on elections day. Please go to vote. West Bay South candidate, Raul Nicholson Co. Thank you for that couple of minutes of me saying that. No, it's important, man. Tomorrow we need to get out there and vote.
Yep.
I can't wait, man. I'm just going to vote 4 times.
Right. Yeah, vote. Look, this is part of a democratic process, right? Yeah. And that's why I've always felt like engaging people, because you have to give the voters a decision. The voters nowadays have access to information, and it's actually ironic when you are refreshing when you speak to them and you see them on the road and you don't know who they are, but they say, "Oh, I like what you said," right? But what I don't like is when that person was asked a question and they never answered the question, even though they were asked it in 15 million times and different things. And when we do that, we actually undermine the democratic process because we're trying to create a persona or an image that isn't really there.
Right.
So when you see me, right, as as you always say, a Norris Pointer. This is who I am, right? Like, there's no if, and, or buts. The same guys that I grew up with are the same ones that I see on a Saturday or on a Friday. And that's who I am. I am a person that loves West Bay, that will not, when elected, believe in West Bay. I'm going to be accessible, more accessible than maybe you may want to be accessible to me, because I pride myself in actually communicating clearly in a concise manner. And unless we get unless we hold our elected officials to that type of level of interaction, we will not be getting the proper representation. And that's why my fear is that in West Bay South has not had that type of representation. And the fact is that the individual that's running has actually been chosen to run, right? I'm questioning whether that sort of will be the same mentality. And you can be guaranteed that's the difference between me. I've never left. I won't leave. And I will be accessible at all times. And you can contact me. You can email me. You can direct message me on Facebook, on Instagram, in whatever platform you choose. And you can be guaranteed you get a response. And you can ask any voter that have actually responded to me. I've sent messages to them. I've emailed them, because that's what these people are craving for information and craving for honesty and transparency. And there's a book that was written by Ray Dalio. I don't know if you've read it. You've heard it, right? Called Principles, right? Yeah. Principles. Fantastic book. Radical transparency. Radical transparency in everything you do.
All right.
Okay? And that involves communicating in a transparent way and not in a verbal way that you try to confuse people. People are nowadays are not easily confused. Right?
So with that in mind, right? With license from you, and not because I had my videos this morning or I'm savoring the flavor of cassava cake because I had it in a while. Let me ask you, and I'll use me for an example. If we look at the media, if we look at civil servants, and increasingly a lot of those in the private sector, the refusal, the fear, the inability, the unwillingness to publicly comment, right, to critique, criticize, condemn, or even to compliment the actions or inactions of our politicians because of some perceived fallout. They may be victimized, intimidated, chastised, ostracized, some other, right, way feel marginalized. So if I were to say, well, what you just said about being inaccessible, without the ineffectiveness and all of that, could equally apply to all of the 19 constituencies, some to a greater extent than the others. And then to the voters who would say, but wait a minute, this guy has been there for X years, and but for the last few months or last year or a little bit, wasn't too bad. Prior to that, was almost a waste of time, right? And if I were to say that about, by all due respect, because I think the Premier has won glowing reviews internationally, we could say, well, the guy is this, that, next thing, and not that well. Two things will happen immediately. I'll get chastised, but what do you get off condemning him? Secondly, wait a minute, you're a civil servant. You mean you're supposed to have a brain to think? Now, if this is a democracy, if we're in the 21st century, why can't you, me, John, Paul, and Mark and Mo have an opinion and share it publicly?
Right. Well, just the first point is that you can't expect in West Bay South case the 6 weeks before the election announce that you're going to run for election and expect to understand what the issues are. So in my opinion, that sort of behavior is actually disrespectful to the voters, and the voters should be given a lot more respect. You need to look at people and understand what their intentions are. If their intentions are pure and true, then yes. But if you 6 weeks before you announce a running election, I don't think that you understand really what's going on. To answer your other question, which is, look, we're in a democracy. Democracy in its very essence, right? If you go back to when with the Greeks and when they spoke about it, democracy, in my view, is to allow persons to exist within a political realm or a society or community with their own voice, right? Respecting of others, right? But still have their own voice. I think that it's important that everyone has a voice. And has a voice that is not in any way, you have to be respectful. You have to not be disparaging on people unnecessarily or slanderous or whatever. But you should be given a voice. You should have a voice. That's what create democracies. When you don't have that, right? There's whether you have a bit of it, you undermine democracy. And at the same token, if you are as a person or as a politician isn't given information, you asked the question earlier. Transparency. If you are not giving the voter the full information, then you're undermining democracy as well, because you are trying to hoodwink the voter into making a decision based on what you think they need to hear.
But isn't this then one of the things that many of us, aspiring politicians to that person that can't wait to get eligible to vote, to the seasoned voter, the perception is that many politicians, the longer they're in office, the more it seems to be evident, they believe the voter is ignorant, incompetent, undeserving of information, can't hold them accountable, and isn't competent enough to understand what's transpiring. So the voter feels like the politician believes that the voter is an idiot. I, on the other hand, think that our voters are probably some of the most intelligent, informed, engaged, right? And that smile, right, isn't false. It's just a passive nature to say, you play a fool to catch wise, right? So why is it that politicians seem to act with such a condescending, arrogant, disrespectful tone, even in election year? If I want to hear from you, is their mantra, I'll ring your bell. As opposed to, remember, I'm your servant to help to navigate the path ahead. So why are we as voters taking it, and why do politicians believe that they have that mandate?
Well, I don't think the voters are going to take it. I think the voters are going to see through a lot of this. And voters are going to see someone that appears upon the scene to help when there was really a time for help, and show their true altruistic views and being benevolent, right? And trying to help the community in whatever way they can. Someone showing up and saying, I'm going to represent you. You can't represent me if you didn't see me through the difficult times.
Right.
But the other thing is that, yes, if the voters are informed, and for persons to take that view, whether and not to engage people, and not to engage them in a transparent fashion, not just pay lip service to it. Dwayne, I think that I am very comfortable, and perhaps it's a generational thing, right? And it's also to do with when you've worked in the private sector. Okay, when you've worked in the private sector, you're held accountable for everything you do. Whether you walk in, if you decide to come 8:30, whether you're the CEO or you're just a startup or a trainee, if you arrive at 8:30 in the morning, it's not seen as something good. If you leave at 5 or 6, it's seen as you have to set an example. So everything that you do, that's why when you ask about engagement, to me it's a natural thing. It's a natural thing for me to, when asked the question, to answer it in a clear, concise manner. And if I don't know the answer, for me to go back and get the information. Because if an employee asks me a question and I can't answer that, I should say so. I shouldn't have to wait to hide behind and play verbal gymnastics to not address it, because I am going to be held account to that. Secondly, you have shareholders, you have owners, you have board of directors that you must report to, and I see my role as a public servant or an elected official in the same way. There are people that will require information, and obviously if it's sensitive information and it's deal with sensitive political or security information, you cannot divulge that. But talking about your plans in an open fashion and an open way, that should just come naturally. But the other thing is the media plays a role as well. So when I'm on the show again and as elected member, you should ask me probing questions, and you should if I am answering the question, you're like, Raul, that's not how you should, that doesn't answer the question. And if it doesn't answer the question, then I need to come back and give you an answer that is acceptable, not only to you but to the public. So the point I'm making is that perhaps we need to get accustomed to people where information is freely given, right? It's open. There's no barriers to entry to information. You can get it anywhere on the internet.
So stop playing games, semantics and deception. Can I read to you, please? We got let me read the WhatsApps that have come through, right? Let me take this one first. This one reads, and I will read it verbatim. I can see it today. That's good. Says, what evidence do you have, Mr. Raul, that Andre has been chosen? Question. Please provide factual evidence. This innuendo is so unethical. I have heard the same thing about him, and that Raul is taking money from the dark group, but he has explicitly said he is not. Why should we believe him and not Andre? The public needs to know his facts on quote-unquote chosen before decisions are made tomorrow. I feel there is some degree of deceitful practice being hidden with his statement. That's one of our listeners' comments, Mr. Raul.
Right. Well, what I've heard is that he was chosen. He decided to come here, and before the previous minister resigned, this is what I was told. I have no evidence of it. Is what I've been told from people that are senior within the political realm, and said that was the decision that was taken, and that's not something that I have created. I was told by others. So it's as simple as that.
Okay, so we're speaking to a candidate for West Bay South, Mr. Raul Nicholson Coe, and I'm looking at a couple of the comments, but this is for another segment, so I'll maybe look at them better. But with that in mind, the level of accountability that we as voters should ensure is had, and those who are elected should expect to be the norm. But the flip side is we know many people bluff and bluster, and they are thin-skinned. Right. We know many of us can be vitriolic, demeaning, and at times dogmatic in the way we present things, simply because we believe that we walk and carry a big stick. Right. So going forward, let's say that this transpires and I decide to take on the mantra that I live by. We'll see how that plays out. Right. Now, I'll say this to the guy listening, dapper no who frightened. So really that'll be for today. Right. But with that in mind, going back to these other things, we see pressures being borne on the individual 19 constituencies from outside to somehow influence voters from within that section to push them a certain way because it plays to the interest of the puppet masters. Right. And thereby, if the voters don't vote the way that they think they should vote despite all that transpired, they may feel as if they're being maligned and they may feel that they may suffer a consequence. But yet the decision is independent for that individual constituency to say, listen, we choose between this one and this one. The balance probabilities, we think this one's better. But it plays out on a national scale in any event. Right. So you talked about a national vote being the best way for this country to avoid being cut up into little bits and pieces and shoot up and spit out into the little garrison communities that we have created. So how do we solve that? Would you be coming into looking at reviewing, as you said?
I have said that I would look at reviewing a national vote, because I think if you think about anything that we create in West Bay South impacts the entire West Bay, but also the entire country as well. So it's important for us to be able to do things from on a national level. It's not just, we can't see a community that's just your constituency and deal with it and just do the things that benefits that particular community. It's important that we think nationally, and by the same token, and why aren't we electing persons that actually represent the national vote, right? And that, I think, it's a step in the right direction, and it's a step that I think is worthwhile looking at, because what you do then, you create unnecessary, to be honest, it creates unnecessary inefficiencies as well, and voters would actually, I think, based on the discussions that I've had with voters, that they may be actually inclined to do that, because they would think we can actually pick. And in other countries, like for example in Turks and Caicos, they have like a hybrid voting system. Right. Whereby they have I think it's 10 constituency votes and then like 5 national seats. I mean, that could be a hybrid solution. I don't think that it's something that we should adopt wholeheartedly, but it's worth because it's worth looking at because of what you've just said. I think there's a bit of confusion in terms of, and people may say, we have, let's pick the best 19 leaders to run the country.
Let's have that discussion, because we need to look at unity and not disjointed approach.
That's right.
Now, I'm glad that we have people who are willing to engage, have discussions. Right. Now, when you take us through as you wish to share, but in that vein, as we look at where we are today, I think there were growing concerns that we would have a lower than normal voter turnout for different reasons, not least of which that there is a great sense of fearfulness among the populace, even though it seems that this thing isn't about the community, but the way governments and politicians, not just in Cayman, not just in the region, but globally, have created this almost unnecessary fear of this boogeyman that we have permeating the community, right? What the politicians say, don't let a good crisis go to waste, right? So our voters need to go out, and we need to commend the election office for doing their job to say, listen, I'll give you a pencil if you were, but your pencil is different from the next guy's pencil, so you can mark your ballot. Here's a mask if you don't want a mask. That's great, but we as a people need to get up and act, go out and vote, and mark the ballots.
I agree. Listen, look, this is your democratic right. And the other thing that's quite disappointing is that the number of voters under the age of 24. Okay, it's in my constituency, it's around 5%. Okay, it's not a lot. Okay, it's not a lot. So what I would like to see when elected is that every eligible voter that turns 18 will automatically be put onto the voters list. Automatically, because that you're there's like 5,000 people that are eligible to vote that have not registered to vote. So, but going back to that particular thing, we have done a lot to safeguard ourselves from COVID. We have all the protocols in place. That should not be to prevent you from actually going out and voting, because it's important that we exercise that right, that we go to the polls and speak our mind, because we cannot expect change to happen or things to be developed, like the plans that I have for our people, of West Bay South and the people of West Bay and the wider community, if we don't elect the people that can actually how and do it and not talk about it.
So we're speaking to Raul Nicholson Co for West Bay South. Can I piggyback on what you just shared? This is, Raul's paid segment, but he allowed me to talk this. It'd
be a very boring thing if I was just me on the show.
So let's pick up on what you shared just now about accountability and responsibility, both on the part of the voter as well as the elected, official. You talked about scorecards and in the private sector having to measure the person by the performance or lack thereof, and then being decided whether you get a bonus, whether you get the contract renewed, and like this is a job interview, and we're deciding. So I pick up just what you shared,
of course,
now and prior. So we look at the government of the day, and we see the individuals in some shape, form, or fashion in office today, being in office 4 years ago, 4 years prior. So if you say for the last 8 years at the helm, right? Again, we pick the premier who's been the premier for 2 consecutive terms, right? In your assessment, as a voter in the 19 constituencies, and you were evaluating, so your job now, you do the management review, and these are the people before you to decide. Do we judge them and give them a passing grade? Do we judge them and find them wanting?
But
from your perspective?
I think in everything we have to look at it objectively. There are things that this government has done very well. They've managed the economy very well. They've managed the COVID situation extremely well. I think that we now have an opportunity to get more Caymanians employed, especially in the tourism industry. And I think that we need to do more of that now. We've been over a year in lockdown. We should be retraining, retooling our Caymanians to be able to take up some of these jobs, so that when the restrictions are lifted and we're allowed to have free travel and free movement, we have more Caymanians employed, that we have less Caymanians on the NAU, we have less Caymanians requiring assistance by the government. That's what I think needs to happen. And we also need to do more. We need to regulate, we need to enforce these regulations, because I also get a lot of complaints from Caymanians who are willing to work, who want to work, and I'm not saying there's a lot going on. There's a lot happening. The COVID affected lots of people mentally and emotionally, right? But as a government, you need to think of the big picture. And that's one of the other reasons when you have persons that have worked in the private sector, we're accustomed to having to deal with multiplicity of very major decisions, right? And you're trained to think in a certain way and to basically see the wood for the trees, right? As opposed to not seeing the wood for the trees. And I think that there are a couple of things that I would, obviously getting Caymanians employed, getting Caymanians trained. That is something that I think every government should do, and we could have done a lot more of that in the last 12 months.
Okay. So with that then, and looking at it, because almost all of the guys elected, I say that respectfully, male and female, they are our friends. We know them. We've went to school. They are neighbors. Our children played together. End of the day, we're cordial to one another. Some are our friends, right? And we have private conversations with them. And we chastise them. We compliment them. We know each other, right? Future plans for reopening and restarting the economy, as you talked about, getting the employment and the like back to order. If you were again looking at it, and I can ask it in two veins, right? One is, have you seen or know or otherwise aware of the government, because it's for the incumbents to sort of defend their record. They're the defending champions. The challenges are coming up. This is the final game. We're in the last half. The score is 0-0, and we don't go into overtime or sudden death or penalties or so on, right? So is there something effective and objective that they have, that you've seen, that you've heard, otherwise that would propel us to that bright future? Part one.
Of opening
up or moving forward post-election, because this is basically just putting on the boots and getting on the pitch. We're still not blowed yet, right? So how, to your mind, I mean, are they in that driving seat? And I'll ask the second part after that.
Okay, well, I mean,
as in a subsection.
I don't know the specifics in terms of their plans. I can think about what my plans would be when I'm elected, which would be that once the protocols are in place, once they have been a certain percentage of the population inoculated, I think it's 75% where herd immunity keeps seen, where the U.S. is at, and what they're forecasting, the CDC is forecasting to have 95% of persons inoculated in the U.S., we could actually start easing the restrictions, right? And we could think, if, for example...
But this is your plans,
This is my plan, right? I have not seen a plan.
So the government, okay.
I have not seen a plan, and it would be remiss of me to actually speak about a plan that I have not seen.
Yeah.
What I'm thinking is my plan, and what I think we need to have to start thinking about is when we have to set particular goals and objectives. If to open, let's say it's opening at a particular date, these are all the metrics that we must hit in order to open up.
Okay.
If those metrics are not hit, then it will go by a week or it'll go by 2 weeks. So that's how I would like to see it. The other thing is that we have to understand that we cannot remain closed in perpetuity. But whatever we do must be done in a manner that protects.
All right. When we come back from that break, I want to ask you more about your plans. But quickly, going into the break now, you evaluate, because that's what you do. You're training teaches to that sort of training and analysis and implementation. So you're looking at the incumbents and just the government side, the cabinet, the councillors, just that side. Would you willingly align with them if they're elected, you're elected, and this would be where you move forward because you feel that they have, the right balance in whichever? Or would you say, boy, if I had a better choice, I would do this, that? Not saying who you're going to vote for, but just evaluate the incumbents, because it's for them to defend the trophy. Right? Can I put you and ask you what you think?
Well, I think they've done a good job from an economic perspective. I said that before.
You have.
I have, and I've said also the managing of the COVID. This is, we're in a unique situation, right? Bermuda is shutting down. Jamaica is shutting down, right? There are other countries that are doing the same thing. We are not in that position. So I think they've done a good job of that. You can't sit here and deny that fact, right? But I think we are at a position that we need to put particular goals and objectives in. So I said that if we're going to hit these metrics or these objectives, then our targets, we are going to open up. Yeah.
We're going to just pause quickly, hit the break. But again, is the borrowings helping to, sort of prop up the finances? Well, we'll get to that after the break. Raul Nicholson Co. So join us after.
A caring and community spirit, cherished family and cultural values. These are some of the things that still embodies the Caymanian way of life in the Eastern Districts today. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, located in Countryside Shopping Village, is delighted to offer products and services of real value. Whether it's catering to your family's medical needs or carrying apparel, gifts, and beauty products, Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they're always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
Where the world sees challenges, I see community. Where most see change, I envision opportunities. Hi, I am Raul Nicholson Co., your best choice for West Bay South. Please join me for my final meeting at Heritage Square, located in West Bay at the four-way stop on April 13th at 7:30 p.m. I am ready and committed to serve the people of West Bay South.
We are in an age of exponential change. The world is experiencing a technology boom where innovation is at an all-time high. What does this mean for small island nations? How can we adapt to the emerging digital revolution? Join 900 delegates from 3 Caribbean countries at one regional event to tackle the theme, Global Digital Disruption, Threat or Opportunity. The virtual RF Economic Outlook Conference happens on May 6th. Register today at rfeoc.com.
You are listening to Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
It's only 2 species that we have on the island.
Generations present.
Your voice, your choice.
It is in the best interest of the people of these islands.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Shanda Gallego from Radio Cayman's newsroom. Government reported the results of 658 COVID-19 tests on Monday. 7 were positive, and all were travelers who tested positive following routine screening. So far, 58,530 COVID-19 vaccines have been administered locally, with about 50% of the population having gotten at least 1 dose and 38% having completed both doses. Turning to international news now, U.S. President Joe Biden is set to announce that American troops will leave Afghanistan by September 11th, officials have told U.S. media. The U.S. would miss a May deadline for a pullout agreed with the Taliban by the Trump administration last year. The pullout deadline would coincide with the 20th anniversary of the terror attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon in the U.S. in 2001. Mr. Biden had previously said the May 1st deadline would be tough to meet. U.S. health officials are calling for a pause in the use of the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine after reports of extremely rare blood clotting cases. The Food and Drug Administration, FDA, said 6 cases in 6.8 million doses had been reported, and it was acting out of an abundance of caution. Johnson & Johnson said it was also delaying its vaccine rollout in Europe. And about 40 people were arrested just north of Minneapolis in a second night of unrest over the police shooting of a black man. Protesters in the city of Brooklyn Center defied a curfew and threw objects at police, who responded with flash grenades and tear gas. Police said Dante Wright, 20, was shot and died after an officer mistook her gun for a taser during a traffic stop. The shooting came as the high-profile George Floyd murder trial continues. Those are your latest headlines here on Radio Cayman. I'm Shanda Gallego.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Speaking to Raul Nicholson Co, candidate for West Bay South. And thank you for taking us through now, not to, really appreciate the conversation, and hopefully it'll be what it is, right? Mm-hmm. But share with us as we're looking at, and maybe revisit some of the things, maybe remind us of other things, but
well,
talk and we'll listen.
Well, one of the things, Wayne, like I saw, is transparency, right? And the fact is, I decided to run my campaign in a way to help the grassroots. I am not being funded by anyone. I'm not being funded by DART. I'm being funded by myself. When we started this out, it was a sacrifice, right? It was a sacrifice personally, emotionally, physically, and my family is on board, right? And for people to say that, right, that I am being funded by a particular entity, particular DART, these are clear people that are put there to try to undermine people's campaign and besmirch their character. The other thing is that what I said about Andre is that it's not something that's innuendo. On Andre's platform, he had PPM officials, he had ministers there, and people that were part of their parties. So I am saying that if you weren't part of a party, you don't see anybody on my platform that's affiliated with any party, whether it's the CDP, PPM, or Alliance. I am there, and I am reflective of people that are truly independent and want the right thing for the country. The only special interest that I have is a special interest of the people of West Bay. So the people that I want, that I will represent, and I'm going to represent them, and I'm not going to represent special interests, whether it's a law firm or any other person. I am there to represent the people of West Bay South. And the people that have met me, they feel it, they know it. And what the other issue is that we have to be transparent. I'd say that, listen, if we are affiliated with a particular party, then say so. Okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But you need to go and tell the public that that's what you're doing, because you cannot fool the public. And I am a true independent, and I will continue to be that way, because I have to be an advocate of the people. Right. And I will the plans that I have come up with. If you look at my commitments are commitments. I don't even call it a manifesto. It's my commitments to you. And my commitment to you is that you will have a representative here that's going to always tell the truth, that will always give you the facts, whether it's good or whether it's bad. And that's what I want to be. I want to be that representative.
Okay, so Raul, we have a message here I would like to read to you. It says, West Bay South is the district capital with the only remaining scenic view to the shoreline. What are your plans to protect the Mary Mother Hides Road, which is part of West Bay South capital?
That is a fantastic question. And, that Mary Mother Road, Dwayne, is a place that plays such a vital part in my life when I was younger. There's Slipper Ledges. I don't know if you know Slipper Ledges, right?
Probably not.
You don't know? Oh, you don't want me to tell. The amount of licks that I took on that, the amount of seas that I've run out there, right? That is...
In the white sea grips that used to be there?
Exactly. Oh, unbelievable.
But they're gone now, right?
Right. But that part of, it's either the first part of 7 Mile Beach or the last part, depending on where you live, right?
The first part.
But to us, is the first part. Yeah. So it is and I actually, the reason why I say that, this weekend on Saturday, I decided to have a fun family day. And that's where I held it. And the reason why I held it was for people to appreciate the beauty of that place. That place has to be protected. It must be protected at all costs. The other thing that must be protected as well is people that are artists, right? Ms. Reba Dilbert, who lives right there, is a fantastic artist that we need to protect that stretch of beach. My plan is to acquire that and allow that to be. You don't need to worry about beach access in that location. It's right against the beach.
Yeah.
That was the original road.
Right.
That was the original road that connected to 7 Mile Beach. We need to protect that, because if we don't protect that for future generations, the sunsets that you see there are better than any other sunset, because there are no buildings there. It's just right against the beach. And the amazing thing about the event that I had this weekend, there were kids playing on it. And it was kind of rough, right? And I was like, it reminded me of when I was younger. And and I was telling them that I used to go run seas out here, and I ran seas whenever there's a northwester. I always go and run seas on the beach, because that is. And when we talk about beach protection and enjoying the beach, I challenge any, either current member of parliament or prospective members of parliament, whether any of them have spent more time on the beach than I have. Okay?
But you put in current or running, so we'll exclude me in that.
Well, yes, right.
No, but
my point is that I spend so much time on the beach, right?
Mm-hmm.
That there's nothing that I would do not to protect those types of things, and that's why when you talk about something that you have an emotional attachment to.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I have, and the Mayor Muller Road is something that is a historical, but it's also part of our heritage as well. There's a lot of heritage in that area. There's a lot of history around that road that a lot of people don't know.
Yeah,
and we need to
the railroads, for instance.
Exactly, right. But there are things that along that stretch there was a lot of commerce as well. Along that there was a butcher shop. There was lots of stuff. There was a store.
Shop. Exactly,
it's
right there.
And I want to protect that at all costs.
Right. You mentioned earlier about financing, self-funding, and the like.
Right.
There's a lady who calls so glad for her counsel, and sometimes her willingness to, as she says, reel me from the precipice, right?
Mm-hmm.
But campaign finance is one of the mantras that she champions. And there are some who shared that we obviously know the loophole in the system that you can spend prior to nomination day and it's not accounted for.
Mm-hmm.
It's not illegal.
Right.
You can question whether they're ethical or not.
Right.
And anyway, after that, it has to be accounted.
Right.
But we don't know what transpires and the like. What's your view on that?
I mean, the thing is, in nowadays, Dwayne, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the social media
mm-hmm.
has allowed persons like myself, who are truly independent, who don't have a political machinery behind me, okay,
mm-hmm.
to do these sorts of things. My presence on social media is better than most, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because but the cost of actually doing it is less as well.
Right.
You have to be very creative. You have to be a marketing genius, but it's much easier, right?
Mm-hmm.
Appearing on the radio here, right? And that's why I use this medium, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's an effective medium. It's a economical medium. And that's what allows persons like myself that don't have, the parties behind me who actually, it does help
mm-hmm.
because you just have to show up to the meeting, not me. I actually have to put out chairs. I have to call the sounds guy. I have to make sure people are there. I have people that help me, and there are lots of people on that are on my committee. But sometimes I have to get involved with those things because I don't have a party machinery behind me to
mm-hmm.
do those things. So I can't just show up with my suit on, and I have to get involved, and that's how I am anyway. I like to get my hands dirty and roll my sleeves up to get stuff done.
That's how it should be, right? You want to enjoy the fruit from the tree, you should be willing to help to plant the corn, right?
Right.
Let me just ask of you quickly, and then you can
mm-hmm.
final question for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think for you today.
Mm-hmm.
You shared at the outset that you were, and I'm not trying to paraphrase,
mm-hmm.
even definitely not speak verbatim.
Mm-hmm.
Shocked, maybe the word. Certainly come to aware of the level of poverty, the challenges within the community generally, but in West Bay South.
Mm-hmm.
And West Bay South is a fairly wealthy-ish area.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an eye-opener, I think maybe a word that you use.
Mm-hmm.
Those of us who work in the community in that respect see that, and that probably hurts our heart and gives us to carry greater burdens. How many of us you think, and for you as a prospective MP, how did that change your perspective on the level of poverty, the disconnect between the politician and the voter, the growing disparity between the haves and have-nots, as we cliche these days, and equally, that growing sense of hopelessness that has crept into this country, where the honor and the humility, the sense of pride and integrity is being bought and is... Anyway, I'll be careful if that's not about campaigning, but...
Well,
share with us, man.
It affects different parts of the community, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have the kids who are going to university and they feel like they don't have a future in Cape Town.
Right.
So to address that, you have to get those people's jobs. You have to go back to the to the employers, and like spoke to OC on yesterday, and he's a former head of immigration. He knows the regulations because we know they exist. That we need to go back to these companies and demand that they hire Caymanians that are trained. And don't say that they don't have the experience. They need to get the experience. How else are they going to get the experience? And then you have the elderly who have retired, who may not have savings, who may not have insurance, who are also suffering, right? So we have to think of things in the future. And that was my plan, is that let's set up a sovereign wealth fund or some sort of sustainability fund to allow us to be able to fund these types of social things. Because the other part of this is that can't go and raise import duties that will tax people and let them have less disposable income. We have to have creative ways to fix these issues. But in saying that, Dwayne, I am sure this has been exacerbated by COVID, right? And we have to understand that COVID is maybe a generational issue that we have to deal with. I mean, one in 120 years, the last one, 1918, was the Spanish flu. And that devastated the world's economy, devastated the world's productivity. We now are facing that type of scenario. And in order to be able to fix that, we have to be able to go and think creatively. How do we address these different constituencies, the elderly, the kids that are out of school, the kids that are going into school, the kids that are, early intervention programs. There are lots of things that need to happen. And we have to now rely on experts that have done this before.
Right.
And politicians or prospective politicians, what we have to do is to find a way to implement these things efficiently, to make sure that the maximum amount of people that are going to be impacted will be impacted in a positive way.
So your reference then to the immigration law with experience and the like, somehow, and maybe you can help us to appreciate this, we seem to think that the person, just as an example, who comes to Cayman to work, just as an example, from Canada, who has only worked in Canada, so it's not a financial center at that point, comes to Cayman, we say they have international experience. So a Canadian working in Canada leaves Canada for the first time to work in Cayman, we say they got international experience. They haven't worked in an offshore jurisdiction like Bahamas or BVI or any of those places.
Yep.
But yet the Caymanian graduate who comes back to Cayman to get a job, we say, well, you don't have experience. So how do we, what can we? I mean, but we get away with it.
Of course you can, Dwayne. Of course you can. There's no reason why you can't. If those sorts of things occur, and I know they occur, but if all of the corporations here either have someone managing that corporation has been here for a long time that hasn't arrived yesterday, that understands that this is a delicate balance, okay? A delicate balance in which you have to continue to grow your business, but you also have to play your part in being a good corporate citizen and allowing young Caymanians that have the ability to gain that experience. That's how I became the CEO of a company. I started out as a trainee technician at KB Wireless, right? And then became the CEO of 2 multinational corporations. But it wasn't because they were saying you needed experience. They gave me the opportunity, and I think that where there's a will, there's a way. I have done it. I have done it in my private, when I was in the private sector. There's no reason why it cannot be done. And I have sat with chairmen of a lot of boards here, banks, law firms, managing directors, and they understand that they play a role. They've acknowledged, sometimes I think sometimes we have made a bad decision when hiring, okay? And they said, that is not good. That is not good for me, because the image that I have in the community must be one that I'm actually a good corporate citizen. Right. But the problem is, Dwayne, is that we don't have these honest discussions with people. We don't sit down in front of the CEOs and the directors and managing directors of these partners and directors of these companies and tell them, look, this just isn't right. Okay, it becomes very difficult for me to support a position that you're putting forward to the government when there's clear empirical evidence that you have not hired Caymanians, or you've hired expatriates in a more disproportionate manner. And we have to balance that with, if they have to grow their business and they need, 10 senior people, and we don't have 10 senior people on island, we may have to get 8 senior people from away, and you get 2 locally. Right. But it has to be a collaborative effort. But this is what I think it takes, Dwayne, is that you and I we've always had great discussions, but we've never had a discussion whereby there isn't some form of agreement. All discussions don't have to end in a disagreement.
We need to cover consensus, right?
Right.
All right. We're out of time, but I want to give you 10 seconds.
Yes. Well,
final thoughts.
Well, look, tomorrow is a pivotal day for Cayman. It's a more pivotal day for West Bay South. I want everyone within the West Bay South community, or everyone listening to me on this radio, actually, and on YouTube or any medium, to go out and vote. But call all your friends, tell them, explain to them the reason why Raul Nicholson Co. is the only choice of West Bay South, because I have the answers. I know how to implement, and my plan is that every Caymanian must benefit for whatever we do. And we must benefit in a way that becomes generational, not that you benefit today and tomorrow you have to think about how you're going to be able to survive. I will make sure that NAU is sorted out. I will make sure that Caymanians are given the proper training opportunities, that our education system is fixed so that Caymanian kids can be part of this new economy. We're going to focus on science, technology, engineering, and math. I'm going to be implementing a fiber optic network to allow the economy to have a third leg so that we don't have to be too dependent on any one particular pillar of the economy now. This is something that I am not only committed to, I am wholeheartedly invested in this. I am going to make sure that this happens, Wayne, because the measure of success, like I've said before, isn't how many conferences I attend, how many papers I've written, or how many policies I've written or read. It's about how many people's lives I have impacted, how many people that I have finished and allowed them to get an education and a decent job. So come tomorrow, vote number 2 on the ballot in West Bay South.
Thank you, Raul Nicholson Co. We're going to pause and take a break. When we come back, we'll talk today.
Thank you, buddy.
Ouch.
Yeah, the hand sanitizer work good too, you know. Join us
for another See What I'm Saying this Friday. Mosquito 2.
Mosquito bite me.
Okay, Ray, are you ready for another See What I'm Saying?
Yeah, man, we got to continue with the mosquito. So, mosquito 2.
Mosquito 2.
The itching.
Itching. How you spell itching?
You know, you had to ask my father. That's what he says all the time, itching. Mosquito 2. The itching. Bring your rubbing alcohol.
The sequel to Mosquito 1.
We had so many calls, we got to do another one.
Change stagnant water in every pot. Mosquito can make babies.
See what I'm saying?
Is a special feature of Talk Today with contributions from the National Museum, a language, history, and culture show on Radio Cayman 89.9 and 93.9 FM.
Mosquito 2, bring on a rubbing alcohol. Hand sanitizer work good too, you know. The itching. Join us. See what I'm saying? April 16th.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette, brought to you by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism, and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands.
Wade Taylor Foster, 1886-1971. Mr. Taylor was born on the Brack, the second child of Wilford and Alma Foster. He was a serious student who excelled in school. He accepted Christ when he was a teenager and became a deacon in Ebenezer Baptist Church at an early age. He married Hilda Scott, with whom he had 6 sons. He was the only Baptist preacher and the only marriage officer on Cayman Brack for many years. Mr. Taylor was a carpenter, boat builder, and businessman, as well as a cattle farmer who provided the island with beef, especially at Christmas time. He was a government auditor on Cayman Brack for 40 years, for which he was awarded the Cayman Islands Medal of Honor. Turtle fishermen all knew him as he outfitted their boats, and on their rerun home, he purchased their turtle shell for shipment to England. He provided work and sustenance for many families through his shops and his cattle business, and his generosity helped many Brackers survive during and after World War II.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette, brought to you by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism, and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands.
Wouldn't it have been grand if you had purchased land 30 years ago? It may not be 2020, but a perfect vision has never been more clear. Cayman Brack and Little Cayman, poised for growth with an eye on the future. Your land, your history, your future. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
And now a paid political message from the Progressives.
The strength of a team is each individual member. The strength of each member is the team. This election, vote for an experienced government. Vote for a government who leads with you in mind. And vote for a government who has a trusted and reliable track record. The Progressives have guided us safely through one of the most dangerous periods in our history. The Progressives have shown us the importance of working together to strengthen and protect our islands. Together, we're stronger. On April 14th, vote for a stronger, safer future. Vote Progressives.
Put your X for the Progressives. Serving you is the objective.
This is a paid advertisement by the Progressives.
My dear constituents of Cayman Brac East, on April 14th, we must do our civic duty and go out and vote to ensure that the best candidate is elected to form the next government. With God's help and your support, I pray that you choose me to continue to work as your representative. We have made a lot of progress, but I have even greater plans for Cayman Brac East. Our first priority will be keeping you safe and rebuilding our economy. I am therefore respectfully asking for your vote on April 14th to safeguard your future and your children's future and to provide new exciting opportunities. On April 14th, vote for number 1, Connolly O'Connor Juliana.
This is a paid promotion by the Progressives.
Election Day 2021. History in the making.
Stay informed.
Radio Cayman brings you the latest updates from the polls and live coverage from our correspondents out in the field, including special in-studio panel discussion covering all things elections 2021.
Let's see if we can find a way that together we can move the country forward.
With Talk Today's Sterling Dwayne Ebanks and For the Records, Orrit Connor.
It may not be all rosy, the future of the Cayman Islands, depending on which road we decide to travel down.
Plus other guest panel members. Coverage starts at 7 p.m. Stay informed on Election Day 2021. 45 years of bringing you results. Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
The following is a paid political message from Dr. Frank McPhail, Georgetown candidate East.
But Dr. Frank cares. Yes, he cares. Yes, he cares. For his people. Yeah. Dr. Frank cares. Yes, he cares. Yes, he cares. For his nation.
The proceeding was a paid political message from Dr. Frank McPhail, Georgetown candidate East.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. And continuing for another paid political statement. As you know, his campaign says, your candidate for Red Bay, James Samuel Jackson. My good friend Samuel, good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you for the courage, the conviction, and not just being courageous, but for being so willing to offer yourself as a candidate. It speaks well to our democracy that we have people who are prepared to take, and do what's necessary to move us forward as a country. So good afternoon to you and to all the candidates. God's richest blessings, guidance, direction, counsel on all of us so that we move forward with a country that is loving and kind and united and willing to make the cold, hard choices to position us. So I trust that it hasn't been too exhausting. Those who have not been on the campaign trail don't know.
It is a tiring process. It is nothing easy.
No, man.
Certainly to do what I believe most candidates have been doing, which is to, traverse the relevant district, meeting new people,
right,
and all of that. But before I get into that, good afternoon to you, Dwayne, and good afternoon to the listening public.
Yeah, but I miss our evenings out, man.
We're in our final stretch. I mean, one of these days, we'll return to normalcy, hopefully.
Yeah, man.
Hopefully, after the election, we won't have too much horse wrangling to contend with, and I suppose that depends largely on the outcome.
Yeah, but this is something that if I'm, I really don't care. Anybody who want to take me to task, my dad told me, you know how to defend yourself. I commend you for this. You said it last year in our discussions on air before there was any political discourse, you said it repeatedly that the voters in all the districts, but in particular in your constituency of Red Bay, how engaged and informed, how intelligent they are. And you've shown such a respect and appreciation for them that it's humbling, because this is the part I'm mindful of. Many times we get in positions, political positions in particular, whether appointed or elected, where it appears that there's an arrogance and a condescending approach towards the voter until there's election time. But I recall our conversations last year when we were talking about things, and even though the discussion was very remote, we weren't in person, I could see, virtually see the honesty, the sincerity, and the respect that you had for our people. And then as you shared the voters across the country, but in Red Bay in particular, how intelligent and how appreciative they are that there's someone who say, listen, I value you, but I also have great respect for who you are as a person, as an informed voter. That gives me hope. I'm not voting in that district, but that gives me pride in knowing that that's our people. And I love this place, man. I mean, I love this country like I love cooked food, man.
So do I. There's no place better, in my humble view. You're absolutely right. I mean, and this isn't political pandering. This is the truth. I have met some incredibly intelligent folks in the Red Bay area in particular in recent times who are very engaging, who are not afraid to give constructive criticism, who are, who put me to task, ask, all the relevant questions. But what unfortunately is sadly lacking, you talked about it, making an informed decision. The problem we have in this country, right, generally, not just in Red Bay, but in basically any district where you have this PPM-led government, coalition, whatever it is, unity government, you seem to have a lack of information from what I've seen, what I've experienced. I can speak directly to Red Bay. So they're not able to make informed decisions. You will have seen by now the video that I played at my last meeting.
From Mr. Ian Paget Brown?
From Mr. Ian Paget Brown, QC, which revealed that which we already knew, those of us in the know. But when we would speak to such things, they would be immediately dismissed as, ridiculous, political commentary, etc. And indeed, my understanding is that when that video started in circulation on a certain group chat, the Premier angrily replied saying something along the lines, suggesting that I had paid Mr. Paget Brown for that video. I can tell you, without fear of contradiction, I did not. I would not dare to insult the integrity of a man like Ian Paget Brown by paying him to do a video. If the insinuation is that I was paying him to lie on my behalf, I find that highly insulting, not just to me, but in particular to that gentleman. He is not a liar. He's one of the most honest, decent human beings I have ever come across. He has helped many people in this country without ever taking credit for it. In fact, he's quite the opposite. He's very reserved. I've known Ian now for over 12 years, and he has helped me tremendously. I have been the beneficiary of his sage advice on many, many occasions. And he's truly one of those people who came here and earned his space in Cayman. And I remember heavily the 16th of January 2012 when he stood up in the well of the Grand Court and delivered one of the most poignant speeches I'd ever heard. It gave me goosebumps. When he called the legal profession out for all its failings, with all of them there present to witness it, and they all hated him for it because he dared say what they all knew, what we all knew, but no one to speak to. They made a pariah of him out after that, tried to ridicule him, but you know what? His reputation to this day remains intact. There's too many good people in this country that knows how good a man he is. And his credibility is beyond question, beyond reproach. So the Premier takes, a great risk in trying to insinuate those sorts of, spurious things that this is a paid advertisement. Ian wouldn't do that. He wouldn't lie for anyone. Right?
I'll tell you what, I don't know him at the level that you know him. I've known of him, and he is a remarkable gentleman. I mean, he really the chairman of the Law Reform Commission
for a long
time. And that, just sitting here on this side, that speech he made in the Grand Court that day, there were a lot of talk about what a legal practitioner's bill should look like and whichever. And for me, that was a seminal moment as a non-lawyer, just on the periphery of the legal profession, realizing how important this thing is to the country, not just to the legal profession, the ramifications for all of the professions, but for the reputational, the reputation of our country. Now, again, I don't practice. I'm not in the financial sector anymore. But this man,
neither am I. But he's one of the founding fathers of the financial services industry.
Yeah,
man.
Yeah.
Right. He is an AML expert. He knows all these things.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned a lot just in recent years from him on anti-money laundering, proceeds of crime regulation, that sort of thing. He is an immense resource. He and his daughter Megan are incredible people.
Yeah,